dirty. So, as most of you guys know, I love the podium. Most of you guys know I got back from a missions trip to Quebec, Canada. About mid-April is when I got back from that trip. And my dad is gone tonight, and he asked me if I could share about that trip tonight. So that is what I'm going to do. So our missions trip, it's called Missions Reality, that we went on with Word of Life Bible Institute, which is still been going to for the last 2 years. It is a requirement for every sophomore student to go to. And they kind of give every Word of Life student a choice. They're like, you can choose from one of these. I think we had 7 different choices. We had Quebec, we had Nicaragua, we had Taiwan, we had Wyoming in the States, and we had a couple others. And I didn't really look at some of those other trips that were super far away. So my main choices were Nicaragua, Quebec, and Wyoming as my top choices. And actually, most of the people that went on this Quebec trip, not everyone kind of gets the trip that they want, and I was blessed to get my top choice for the Quebec trip. And since it's a class, and kind of what they try to teach us with this course is what it's like to be, if you were a missionary, just put into the field. So it's a missions trip, but kind of the focus is they pair us up with other missionaries that are in the area. They kind of let us learn off of them and then get to do missions work with the people that are actually out there. So we went to church on Sunday, complete only French. No English was spoken. They actually told the speakers, most people that are at these churches are bilingual speakers, so they could have accommodated for us, but they went out of their way to tell them, no, only speak French, let them know what it's like to be in a culture. We didn't know that they told them that, so that was fun. But we got to go to different ministry outreach events like youth groups, church, and just be with different students that were around. And it was a lot. It was a lot of shock, just going to different cultures, seeing how different people act in different scenarios, and just kind of visiting a new place. We got to visit 2 main places on our trip. We went to Montreal, Canada, which is probably a name that's more familiar to most people, and Sherbrooke, Canada, which is kind of a smaller town. It's not tiny, but it's just not as big as Montreal. So we spent our first few days in Montreal, where we got paired with a church that we would stay with for a few days, and we got paired with some host homes. Really, the only things that were organized by Word of Life were the missionaries that we got to be with and go and do missions with. But the church had 0 ties to Word of Life. Like, they knew a guy that knew a guy that knew a guy. And the church just goes, oh, those are missionaries? Come on, like, we'll take them in. And same for our hosts. We stayed with, I think we stayed with 4 different houses. All the guys were in one house, and all the girls were split up amongst a bunch of other people's homes. These people didn't know us. All they knew is that we were Americans coming to do mission work, and they went, yeah, we want them, we want to house them. They went out of their way to be hospitable towards us, even though we didn't know them at all. A little thing about the guys' host home is amazing. They gave us every evening, it was about midnight when we came back to our house every night. And they gave us a giant refrigerator full of chocolate milk, which we drank in about one night. And then filled it again. We found out later it was about $50 worth of chocolate milk every time they filled it. We drank a lot of chocolate. But these hosts would have to get out the husband anyways. He was a mechanic, I can't remember exactly, he worked on airplanes. But he'd have to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but before he would go to bed, he'd make sure that he stayed up, got to see kind of the mission work that we were doing, working in the area. So we got to stay with them, and they made a lot of very fancy, like Quebec, like meats and cheeses and stuff that was imported straight from France. And then they had like the Coke Oreos on the side, and they're like, these are American food, we want you guys to feel at home here. So that was fun. So that's just a little bit about our host homes that we got to stay with for 3 days while we were in Montreal. Some of the other ministry opportunities that we got to do in Montreal, we got to work with a pastor, his name is Joel. Can't pronounce his last name. French, a lot of the French stuff I can't pronounce. But he basically showed us missions, and this was pretty early on in our trip when we got to Quebec. We didn't really fully understand the heart of the Quebec people, really how they view the world and how they view Christianity. But he told us that if you walk up to anyone in Quebec and try to share the gospel with them, they'll run away. Like they won't care about the conversation anymore. They won't try to engage in conversation. They'll just get up and walk away. They just don't open up the gospel, basically, he was telling us. So what he did is he gave us, everyone in our group, he said, here's $20, go find someone, buy them a meal, buy them groceries, see if there's any way you can help them, or if, just find any way that you can help people in the community. And what we found is the moment we helped people, they immediately ran away. They did not want to have a conversation. The people out there were very, it's a colder culture, so it's strange if you just walk up to someone on the side of the road and then want to have a conversation with them. Like, that's very foreign. So walking up to someone saying, hey, like, you're hungry, can I buy you a meal? They don't know what to do with that. Like, they had no idea what to do with anything like that. So Joel, his whole ministry was more long-term. So he would work in the area, he would try to help people in the community. He's a pastor at this church, and just one of the things that he does to try to help his community is he always gives himself half an hour before he goes to church every Sunday. So if he's driving, he's on his way to church and he sees someone that needs help, and he always has availability to help someone. And he always tries to make himself available inside his community, and he was just trying to show us that. He goes, this is $20, like, depending on where you're at, like, you might be able to help a few people with this, and that's not a ton of money. Like, if someone isn't able to get lunch and you see a homeless person on the side of the road, it doesn't cost that much to buy that person lunch, and you just make an impact on that person. And just at least a friendly presence with them. And he was like, open air evangelism does not work. Don't do open air evangelism. Like, you're not gonna have any good conversations with people with that. About 2 hours later, we did open air evangelism, and it was very good. We actually had at the beginning of our trip leaders and people that were on the trip last year, they were saying you're not gonna have any good gospel conversations with any people. You're not going to see any fruit from any of the labor that you do when you're out there. And just overall being very discouraging about the trip. Like, you're not going to see, people are going to hate you, basically, we were told. But we get out on the streets, and everyone that we talked to, absolutely everyone, wanted to have a conversation. Whether it was, I hate you because you're a Christian, or genuinely curious about what was like going to be said in the conversation, they wanted to pursue a conversation. They wanted to keep talking. They wanted to hear what we had to say. Which is, because that was complete opposite of what we were told. Like, I know people that were on the trip last year, complete opposite of what we were told about this trip and how people would act and react to the gospel. And one of the reasons that people react this way whenever they hear the gospel or you bring Jesus' name to these people is because over the last, I believe it was 60, 70 years ago, the Catholic Church had a lot of power in Quebec. So the Catholic Church, like, I had people during open air evangelism tell me, like, all the things that the church did to them and all the things that Jesus did to them. Basically saying that the Catholic Church would knock on their door and ask them, like, say, hey, like, it's time for you to have more kids. We need to have more kids for the Catholic Church. If you don't, you're going to go to hell. It's time to put your kids in Catholic school. They put your kids in Catholic school. And they were doing all these things to all these people, and they were over-separating so many boundaries. The Catholic Church also had a lot of authority within the government, so they had the authority to tax people, and they were able to build these giant cathedrals off of people's money. So when they were first built, there would be millions of people, like, every year coming to these giant cathedrals. But every single one that we visited on this trip was completely empty. One of the big ones that we got to visit when we were in Montreal was St. Joseph's Oratory. St. Joseph's Oratory was crazy. Outside there is a giant stone staircase leading all the way to the top. And this is one of the things that I would have a beautiful picture of. Like, if anyone wants to see pictures afterwards, I have like 4. I can show you all 4 of the pictures at one time. But the oratory, there's 283 stairs to get all the way up to the top. And next to this cobble stairs where most people were walking up was splintered wood. And what the people would do is, as they would climb the splintered wood, they'd stab their hands as they're climbing the stairs and stab their hands and knees into the wood as they're climbing to mimic the suffering of Jesus, to earn favor with him to some degree. And every 5 stairs they would pray. I don't know exactly what they would pray. They just pray like every milestone, like every stair they'd pray, every 5 stairs they'd pray. List of different prayers. But it would be like an all-day exercise. People would be on these stairs all day, just slowly climbing to get to the top. This giant room with Jesus at the center, and he's up there on the cross. And just above Jesus is Mary looking down at him. And there were 3 people at the foot of Jesus praying, and our translator, just with tears in his eyes, just tells us and goes, no, they're praying to Mary. They're reaching Jesus' feet to reach higher up to get to Mary. And so we see that immediately after we go to a room to the left, it's this deeply lit like red room. And there's Apple Pay everywhere. So $3 for Apple Pay, you can light a candle, and you can have the dead body of the person that built the oratory is laying down, like just not in an open casket, like his body's right there. And you can light for $3 with Apple Pay right on it, XUCC. You can have him answer your prayers and hear your prayers. But if you pay $6, you can light a bigger candle, and your prayers are even more likely. But this is all over the oratory. Everywhere you went, there would be either a candle you could light, which they weren't even real candles, they were light up. So you put in the Apple Pay and then just like flicks on. It wasn't even real. So you have this all over. You have envelopes where you can like get checks. There's like, oh, here's pocket change. Like you can get out of purgatory if you get your pocket change. And all over the oratory, you had like pictures of the saints. You had like statues of Mary, and kind of a running joke with everyone that was walking around is if the place burned down, the only thing that would actually burn is Jesus. Because every single depiction of Jesus around the oratory is made out of wood. Every single depiction of either the saints or Mary is either of stone or metal. And just little things like that, you could see the everyone's word of the thing. And then as you get closer to the top of the oratory, in one of the top rooms, there is this another deep, they like the deep red room with the person that built the oratory, his heart is all inside. And there are lights shining in his heart, and there were people on benches, like just sitting in front of it, bawling their eyes out, praying, like asking for intercession from this heart, like saying, hey, like, can you reach Jesus? Can you just extremely demonic stuff as we walk all around the oratory. And that whenever the Catholics, whenever anyone hears Jesus, that's what they think of. Like that's the Jesus that they think that we're trying to preach, and we have to explain to them, no, this isn't Jesus. None of this is, you don't understand the gospel. So we got to do that. And that was our trip in Montreal. Oh, and we had 2 people come to Christ during our open air trip. Sorry, I forgot to bring that up. This is just right after we had our guy say that open air evangelism doesn't work, and then 2 really, really good conversations with people out there. Then the rest of our trip was in Sherbrooke. And for this whole trip, we kind of found out everything that we were doing the day we were doing it. They had a master schedule, but they didn't tell us the master schedule, which kind of made the whole trip even more fun in a lot of different areas. But we got to be out there with David Kelly, the school director. So the Word of Life campus out there, they run a Word of Life school for students, and then they also run a language school. So they teach missionaries how to speak French, and then they can send them out to other French-speaking countries, or in Quebec, or really just send them out and teach them French first. And David Kelly is the director of all of that. They have about 20 staff members. They need about 40 more, and everyone out there does everything. You don't just have one specific job, you kind of work everywhere. David Kelly, he would always meet up at like 6 o'clock in the morning to do breakfast for us. And then as soon as he was done with that, he had other duties and responsibilities that he had to do throughout the day. He had 7 kids that he was constantly trying to make time for. And also his being with us till like 2 o'clock in the morning every single night. David was awesome. We love David. Yeah, the campus out there is extremely understaffed. They are meeting a lot of people out there. They have 2 staff members that are actually from the States that work out there and do a lot of they can out there. But most missionaries that are in Quebec are actually from Quebec. Because kind of what they need is they need bilingual speakers. Like if you were just to come to Quebec and you didn't understand the French language, you wouldn't really be able to get far with people. Just because kind of the attitude with a lot of people that move out there and French is their first language is if you don't try to speak their language, they're just going to see that lack of effort and not really, like even if they speak English, they're not going to continue the conversation with them. So every conversation we start with people, we had to begin with bonjour, bonjour. We had to begin with bonjour. Open every conversation because if we said hello and they just go, oh, they just speak English, they don't really like care to have a conversation with me and they leave. So most of the missionaries and people that are doing ministry out there are from the area. A big emphasis of why we were out there was like at the Sherbrooke campus was to actually get to know the EI students that were out there. So just for scale, we had 21 BI students go out there for the missions trip. And there were 7 students at the Word of Life Bible campus in Sherbrooke. So we had 3 times the number on them. So we show up in their dining room and they're just eating dinner at like 1 or 2 tables. And we just completely surround them. And for the first time, about once a year, English is the dominant language in their area. But we were not just there for the French speakers, but also the English speakers. A lot of people that have moved to the Quebec campus, they don't speak the French language very well, and kind of it takes a toll on people when they move to a new culture, and they don't really understand the culture or the language, and that's completely taken away from them, and they're not able to express themselves how they've always been able to. So we got to spend a lot of time with people out there, and get to know them, and get to do ministry with them as they come along with us. But then we had our work days that we did on the campus, and these were amazing. A huge highlight of the trip. Basically, we had they had 21 extra people, and they had work projects around the campus that they had been trying to get done for years. Like there was this pool table that they had been trying to move for 6 years. There was a like upper room in this like big barn-shaped building. They run all their winter camp stuff in. Everything was caked in about 6 inches of feces. It was terrible. So we had to go up there, peel everything off, take the chairs down, destroy the chairs, burn the wood parts of the chairs, and throw all the metal away. We had, oh my goodness, a lot of it was, mostly what I worked on was the blue chairs. That was kind of a big job out there. But we had projects all over, people ripping apart buildings, demolishing buildings, just cleaning up around stuff that had been needed done for years at this point. But one like genuine miracle that happened while we were out there, we're working and snow starts falling down. And just for a little context to how awful the snow is, it was so muddy. Like if you walk outside, our cabin was on a hill. I slipped and fell like every single morning. I would fall either to the shower or from the shower. I slip and fall outside, and it was so thick and it was so slippery. And as we're working and we're like doing stuff outside, we're moving stuff, we're moving furniture and stuff from in between buildings. We're slipping in this mud and it starts to snow. And everyone's like, no, this is terrible. Like it's not real snow either. Like it's snow and it stays for a little bit and then the next thing is completely gone. But the snow actually, this giant pool table that we had to move, it was about 2,000 pounds. Absolutely massive. We had 6 people trying to carry it. We took it about an inch at a time, 4 people lifting up as hard as they could, and then 2 in the back just pushing. Every 3, like we count down from 3 and move it like literally an inch at a time. Sorry. as soon as they get it outside, like they're like, this snow is gonna be terrible, like it's just gonna sink in the mud. They didn't know how it was gonna work. They thought they were gonna push it outside, it was gonna fall over, and then they would need to like take sledgehammers and just completely destroy the pool table, and then carry it like a fifth of a mile down the hill, like all the way to where it needs to be in the garbage. But they take the legs off and they slide on the snow. And then the pool table, like, from the top of this hill, sits on the top of this bar that he was at and perfectly glides, like on the snow, like in between the cracks of every one of these hills, going side by side all the way down the hill. And we had 6 people like with it pushing it, and they're like trying to stabilize it. If this thing fell, it was broken. Okay, this thing was heavy. If it were falling, it would have smushed. There would be no more of any of those people working on it. And they're trying to do their best. They're trying to guide it, but they can't really guide the 2,000-pound pool table as it's going down this hill. And it gets perfectly within like 2 feet of where it needs to be destroyed and then put back into the dumpsters. But then the amazing part was the next day, you could see the footprints of all the people that had actually dug their feet into the snow, like just standing next to it trying to guide it. But there was no mark that that pool table had ever gone down the hill at all. Like Jen, like we all thought that the snow was like a curse, but no, that God just like that was awesome. That was awesome. Other word projects. I mentioned the French only church. We also got to run youth groups. Our group is so big, we had 21 people. And we had to split between 2 youth groups because 21 people just showing up to any youth group is a little overwhelming, especially when they don't speak a lick of anyone's main language, which is French. So just 21 English speakers, and it would be more of a burden if we did something like that. So we split up into 2 different groups, and both of the churches that we got to work with, again, had no affiliation with Word of Life, had no idea who we were. They just heard that there were these missionaries like coming to the area that only spoke English, and they wanted to help run. And they're like, okay, yeah, you can run lesson plan. Okay, yeah, you can just do everything. You can take the floor for everything. So we showed up to these youth groups, and most people were bilingual but didn't really speak English super fluently. But they just let us show up, run their youth group. And the emphasis, the lesson on what we were teaching for these youth group kids was how to share your testimony. And one thing that was really interesting is about all the Christians that are in Quebec is there's no like half Christian, like you're either all in or all out. And doing open air evangelism, you see most people are all out. And they're like, I'm a Christian, but by name only. Everyone does have all these churches, they were all in. We had, because these kids, immediately after we had this lesson on sharing your testimony, 2 days later we had an open air opportunity for all older kids in the youth group to go out and actually share their testimony and be translators for us when we were going out there. And every single one of like the older kids that were like older in high school were able to do it. Every single one of them volunteered to go do it, which is just amazing. Like I don't know if we just had like a spontaneous like open air evangelism with our youth groups, how many people would just go, yeah, I'm going to Chicago, get there tomorrow. But like even the kids were super invested. We had one person that was at one of the churches that we went to who had just gotten saved like a week prior because he found a like pamphlet, like a gospel pamphlet in the garbage. It was in English, and he didn't speak very good English. He spoke very broken English. He went home and translated every single word of that pamphlet into French, and then read every single one of those passages. Like it was the Romans road that was on the back. Read the Romans, like the entire book of Romans, and then read the book of John, and then got saved like the next day. Amazing testimony. This dude just finding a piece of garbage on the floor that wasn't even his language, and then just went, yeah, I want that. And he's been super involved with the church and Word of Life, like glued to them ever since he got saved. Just a lot of people out there. The Christian population is very small in Quebec, but the people that do claim to be Christians and are practicing, they're very serious about their faith. A little bit about people that, like the Christian population. Quebec, I can't remember the exact number. It's below 2%. Below 2% is considered an unreached people group, and Quebec is considered an unreached people group on a global scale. just with how few Christians that we have. And there's a church on every other corner. Like as you're driving down the road, you'll see churches everywhere. Because 50 years ago, all of those churches would have been completely full. But just how the church has dealt with the people over the last few years. Heard the term like post-Christian a lot. Quebec is like a perfect example of what post-Christianity really looks like, because no one out there has ever heard the name of Jesus, or when they do hear the name of Jesus, it makes them mad. So all the older people we got to talk to, absolutely, like they did not like the conversation. They would talk with us, but they did not like the topic of Jesus. And all the younger people, their parents hated Jesus so much, they didn't even bring it up in conversation. Like Catholicism, Christianity, that no one even knows what that means. Actually, I had one kid that I was doing open air evangelism with, and he was on him and his group of friends, they all had baseball bats, and they were on his way to go to his boyfriend's house who was cheating on him, and they were going to attack him, and he tried to convince me that he's never sinned a day in his life. But what people out there was just super skewed views of like what sin is, and what Jesus did for us on the cross. I could keep going all day. There's a lot that happened on this trip. And on our last day in Quebec, we got to go to Quebec City, which most of the places that we went to, like in Sherbrooke and in Montreal, was pretty bilingual. Like we didn't really run into a lot of language barriers, and we had translators with us. Everyone in Quebec City that we tried to talk to was just, they saw we were speaking English and then just walked away, and we couldn't really have a conversation with them. But a major theme of this whole trip was just not being ashamed of your faith. That's something that a lot of the speakers out there that share with us a lot about. Like if you're going to call yourself a Christian, like you're either all in or you're all out. And we got to see examples of both of those over this trip. And just being bold in your faith, and if you see something that the Lord is calling you to do, just do it. Like these people out here, they had so many like opportunities that they could have just walked away, and they're like, oh no, like I could very easily just sit on my couch and not go share when I have this opportunity, when everyone is organizing this event. But no, everyone stepped up, and that was very encouraging to see. I don't know exactly how to close this out, so I'm just going to a question.
Ask for questions.
Oh, would you guys? Yes. What do you say?
Anybody have any questions for me?
How many times did they refill the fridge?
Oh, twice. There's a lot of chocolate milk. No, because it wasn't just chocolate milk, though. There was chocolate milk, genuine Canadian Canada Dry, and then Mountain Dew. And we drank all the chocolate. Oh my God. Everyone's like chocolate milk. Let's get to know the next time.
So why did you pick Quebec over the other choices that you had?
So I heard a lot bad about the Quebec trip from people that went on last year. A lot of people, like the international students that, like, we're lucky, it's a lot of students from countries all over the world. Had a lot of international students saying that the Quebec trip is awful because it's so close. It's only 3 hours away. It's 3 hours away from our New York campus, and everyone out there, no one knows the gospel. Most people we talked to had never heard the name of Jesus before. And I looked at that and I'm like, well, all these people that have never been on the trip, all these people everyone has never been on the trip hated it, and everyone that was on the trip absolutely loved it. And I got to talk to some of the leaders. They said that in the 4 years that they've been doing leading trips like this, it's the best one that they've ever been on. So that helped a little bit.
I have a question. I pronounce it Quebec. You say Quebec. Is that the correct way to say it?
I don't know. No, they say both. They say both. Okay. And if you want to refer to someone that's from Quebec, you call them a Québécois. That's I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, I was just curious.
Actually, we were told not to say Quebec. We were just told to say Quebec, but then when we got out there, everyone was saying Quebec. So I don't know.
Okay.
for you personally, what was the most impactful thing of your trip or even Bible college experience for people that have not gotten to go on a trip or maybe go to Bible school?
I'd say for the trip, really just how close people were and they had never heard the gospel before. Like that was huge for our whole trip. Like we had gotten to see all, like studying the Catholic Church and how it had an impact on all these people, but then these people not even knowing what that impact was. Like no one knew the gospel, and it was so close. And even the people that like had a familiar idea had it completely wrong. So like even walking around here today, I guarantee, like go to Burkhart's across the street, you can find people that have like, they'll say they know the gospel and they'll get it completely wrong. And they don't have people that are going out of their way to explain it to them. And that's really what people need, is they need people going out of their way to explain the gospel to them. Because we don't have, if we just heard the gospel was convenient, like that's not the Great Commission. That's not, the Bible doesn't say when it's convenient, share the gospel. So I think that was a big theme of the trip, is just make that more intentional than just whenever it kind of comes up. That answers the question. And for at school, I would say the Bible isn't, the deepest truths of the Bible are very simple. Like Jesus loves you. You can study the love of Jesus. You can study the gospel all day and all night, but the heart of the issue, the heart of the Bible, like it's simple. It's not super complicated. I feel like we make it too complicated sometimes.
Do you think the adult Sunday school class makes it too complicated?
No. I don't think that, like,
Just one person.
issues. Talking about deeper issues isn't complicated, but I think people are put off to Christianity because it's too complicated. Like I have friends that won't study the Bible because they hear all these big words, like to describe like theology or like different aspects of the church, and like dispensationalism or just big words that people don't understand. It's not complicated. Just read the Bible.
Did you come away actually believing that the Catholic Church is now an anti-Christ-like church?
So, most people, how they view the Catholic Church, it's a lot different in Quebec than it is here. And just a lot of how there was one room, and a lot of Catholics would still hold to this. Genesis 3:15 being like not talking about Jesus. It's the promise after Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, that God would come and bring a Savior. But they read Genesis 3:15 as that talking about Mary. And there's a lot more, I think, Mary worship. Because Catholics don't hold to the view that they worship Mary or any of the saints. They ask Mary to pray for them. That's kind of, but in Quebec, it's a lot more, no, I'm praying to Mary. Because they don't have, I don't know, I feel like a lot of ideas like that are a lot more not as explained to people out there. So it makes things a lot worse. Like the focus isn't even on Jesus on accident.
Traditional Catholicism will emphasize Mary over Jesus simply because that's Jesus' mother and he has to listen to her.
Yeah.
And I think in Quebec, well, you probably find much more traditional Catholicism than you would in the U.S. In the U.S., you found that kind of Catholicism through the 60s when masses were in Latin and everything was based on tradition. Since then, there's been great changes within the Catholic Church where it's diverged from those traditional roots, whereas cultures like Quebec, where it's steeped in tradition, have not made that kind of change. So you find almost two different churches.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Have any questions? There was a lot that happened. one little thing that I forgot to talk about, I don't know how I forgot about this, this is like a big focal point of the trip. We got to go to a nursing home and we got to sing 2 songs in French to the people at the nursing home. But we had 2 weeks of training where we just like did nothing but we sang these songs in French. We sang Holy Forever.
Would you sing it for us?
No.
No words translate to, or you're just saying?
Most of them. Well, they don't translate perfectly, so we sang Holy Forever, which in French is Dieu tu puissant, which translates to You Are Forever Holy, so it doesn't, I get the idea of most of the song, but I don't know what I sang.
Are those the songs that your father and I got to listen to you serenade your brother with in the camper all week?
Yeah.
Figured.
No, so we learned those 2 songs, and we went to the, like, dementia section of the hospital, so no one, as soon as we were done singing, like, everyone was super excited, we got to sit down and talk to these people, and then we're like, so, like, did you like the song that we sang? They're like, what songs did you sing? I had, I can talk one-on-one about the conversation that I had with 2 nice older ladies.
Who had it mentioned?
Yep, they forgot the conversation a few times and they made moves. I'll put it that way.
Oh dear.
Cougars.
On that note, are there